Jin-Woo starts off as an E-rank hunter, embodying fragility in every sense, hesitant, unsure of himself, passive, and completely lacking the confidence to stand his ground. And in a matter of weeks, spanning only a handful of episodes, Jin-Woo transforms into the complete opposite, bold, unshakable, and almost unrecognizable from the person he once was. But while that might seem inspiring on the surface, it's actually misleading and unrealistic. Real confidence isn't built overnight, and drastic personality shifts don't happen without deep psychological changes, struggles, or setbacks. And in this video, we'll break down why Jin-Woo's transformation felt rushed, why it didn't work properly, and how certain aspects of his character development were mishandled. A lot of people believe that one defining moment can completely change a person. While some big moments could change certain behaviors significantly, it doesn't instantly change who we are. Change happens gradually over time, through a series of experiences that build on each other. But because we only notice the big moments, we assume they are what caused the change. In reality, they are just the final push that makes the transformation noticeable. Transformations are defining moments, and on screen they tend to be exciting and inspiring. A lot of us have our own insecurities and fears, and seeing someone overcome that feels powerful. It resonates with us because it mirrors the struggle we face in our lives, giving us hope that change is possible. But can people improve within a short span of time? There are plenty of cases where someone goes from having nothing to achieving massive success, whether it's wealth, fame, or recognition, in just a few months. That kind of change can happen, but only when it comes to external success. People who rise to the top quickly often put in years of effort before their breakthrough, and even in cases of pure luck, like a single investment that pays off or a sudden wave of public attention, what changes is their status, not what they are at their core. But when it comes to personal traits, there is no such things as shortcuts. Confidence, resilience, and fearlessness aren't things you can stumble upon overnight. An insecure person doesn't simply flip a switch and become bold after one or two experiences. It takes repeated challenges, failures, and gradual reinforcement to truly alter how someone sees themselves. If someone has spent years doubting themselves, one moment of success isn't enough to erase that insecurity altogether. To give you an example, if you put a piece of ice in a cold room and start raising the temperature, it's not gonna melt right away. It just sits there rock solid as it absorbs the heat, and you wouldn't see any visible changes until it finally hits its melting point. And it looks like that one moment caused a transformation, but really, it was building up the whole time. That 1 degree wasn't special, it was just the tipping point. Jin-Woo has already faced the reality of overwhelming power. He knows exactly what happens when he's outmatched because he's lived through it and died facing it. And yet, just a few days later, he stands unfazed against another overwhelming force, knowing fully that his life is on the line once again. You could argue that he wanted to change so badly that he overcame his fear, but think about it. How long does it actually take for you to come to something that terrifies you? If you nearly drowned once, are you diving headfirst into deep water the very next day like nothing happened? In the end of the day, we humans make fear-based decisions. Jin-Woo hates his former self and fears being the same person once again. But it is only when that hatred becomes overwhelming enough that he is able to push himself forward into that danger. Jin-Woo was still the same after the double dungeon, and every successful hunt made him more confident. And the author tried to make it seem gradual, but since it happened within just a few days and a few experiences, it still felt like he was forcing him to be the confident and arrogant version of himself. Like he couldn't wait to get into that point. Someone who reached his breaking point when he nearly died wouldn't actively push himself into similar situations, and even with the right motivation, like finding the elixir for his mother, he would still show hesitation and fear. But you could sense already after the snake boss fight that he changed dramatically. His behavior, demeanor, length, and his voice changed dramatically, almost as if years had passed, not even months. His physical appearance changed to match his newfound power, but we're mainly focusing on the internal change right now, because he's grown confident enough to challenge an opponent with an even bigger gap. He is someone who is often defeated by goblins and had just obtained his new power. He shouldn't be used to what extent he can push himself yet. The double dungeon incident was the defining moment of Jin-Woo's life. He was treated as weak, disposable, and a burden to others. But despite that, he sacrificed himself for people who had no regard for his life. This moment was completely in line with his character because he had been been conditioned to believe his life wasn't as valuable as others. And it is important to remember that this is the same person fighting the spider after 2 weeks at most. When the hunters approached him, Jin-Woo has already knew they betrayed them, and it should be obvious that he would have to fight those hunters in a fight, forced to kill another person. An immoral thing to do, and they make sure to point it out, making the scene's messaging focused on morality at first. The show always makes sure to keep his inner monologue and his thoughts transparent to us, and we always know what he's thinking. But even when Jin-Woo was asked, he didn't react or give it any thought, which might imply that his moral compass wasn't even at play at this moment, and he's more focused on survival, which makes sense for anyone in that situation. Selfish people get what they want in the end. That's what he said before he died, and this is another moment of selfishness displayed by others at his behalf. But we don't really see a big reaction from him, so betrayal of trust wasn't the actual trigger. What happened was simply a momentary loss of focus that almost caused him to lose his life. That's it. If the point of the scene was to show Jin-Woo crossing the line into cold-blooded ruthlessness, then there should have been a moment of reflection or internal struggle before or during the fight. This is someone who used to be a selfless person, and the system forcing him to survive at the expense of others would be compelling, but he murdered them in cold blood. It didn't feel like the system forced him to do it. Carelessness can be fatal. That's the lesson that he was supposed to learn, but it would have made him more careful. It wouldn't have overridden his moral compass altogether, and this made it seem like an unprompted change. They didn't make sure to point out that he has an issue with killing humans beforehand, and the desire for survival is what made him override his morality. This scene presents itself as a test of survival of the fittest, reinforcing the idea that only the strong survive. Yet, at the same time, it raises the moral question of whether it's right to kill humans or not. He is shown to say, "I had no choice," but the choice wasn't even difficult for him, and since there was no hesitation, it makes me wonder, what was the point of the scene at all? Why is this a key defining moment for Jin-Woo? He easily overcame his fear and let go of his humanity in him. What is it that he struggles with then? If change were really that easy, then was there really a change? We know for certain that he became different. This mishandle of his development not only makes his character arc less compelling, but also confusing. And I can tell that the author wanted to add more shock value, but in doing so, Jin-Woo's actions became out of character and felt forced. Even if he argued that these changes in his character make sense, you have to acknowledge that he has undergone a drastic transformation within a very short period of time. He reacts to threats and the possibility of death completely differently now, and he changed to his core. But this isn't even the biggest problem, because in the last episode, something that happened directly contradicts all of this. Jin-Woo sees a shadow of his former self echoing the words. He is still the same weak and insecure guy he was in the first day, implying that he hasn't changed at all in the inside. On paper, this should make sense given how little time has actually passed. A person shouldn't shed their fears and insecurities overnight. However, what we see from Jin-Woo contradicts this entirely. If he did remain the same weak and insecure guy, then why does he still handle enemies far stronger than himself and immense pressure very well? Why does he show unwavering confidence? Why does he still fight till the last second without any hesitation? Why does he actively seek out dangerous situations, willingly stepping into unknown gates, fully aware that whatever lies inside could be far stronger than himself? And who knows, maybe history would repeat itself and a similar incident happens, and he loses his life once again. His actions, his confidence, and his mindset all point to someone who has already embraced strength, yet the narrative subtly tries to pull him back into a moment of doubt that no longer fits. I can't be the only one who thinks that the first 2 episodes of Solo Leveling were its peak, and there is a good reason for that. Jin-Woo being the weakest forced him to think, to strategize, to actually fight for survival without an unlimited level of resources. Every moment of progress felt earned. This side of him still shows up every now and then, but most of the time the system just hands him a way out. He survived the spider in the last moment because of full recovery, a skill we didn't even know existed until the exact moment he needed it. Against the hunters, the system decided he can't die yet and just fully heals him. Igris allows him to win, and he can change his stats at any moment. He has a variety of abilities and skills, giving him a variety of choices that the writer can easily exploit to get him out of bad situations, which even if you think is cool, it is still a cheap writing tool. Most of these feel like a bailout moment, and they cheat the audience, breaking the relation of trust with the show. It undermines any sense of danger and makes the tension feel fake or meaningless. He started being so overprotected by the system that his progression stopped feeling earned and started feeling automatic. Like all he has to do is keep playing, keep pushing, and eventually he will get stronger no matter what. In the end, the system wants him alive, and this helps him not to suffer any real defeats. No matter how overwhelming the enemy is or how he tries to hype them up, you already know he's going to win. And the only time he lost was not to a major rival or a meaningful opponent. It was just to waves of faceless monsters. And before he died, he survived the encounter again because the system bailed him out. Jin-Woo was compelling because he had something to prove. He wasn't just weak, he was desperate to be useful, to help his family, to survive in a world that constantly reminded him of his insignificance. His struggles felt real because he had to claw his way through every challenge, relying on wit, caution, and sheer willpower. But the more the system saved him and assisted him in getting stronger, the less earned his growth felt, like he was simply being handed power rather than fighting for it. At some point, his personality shifted entirely. The fear and self-doubt that once defined him vanished overnight, replaced by an overwhelming arrogance that seemed to come out of nowhere. And this wasn't the natural evolution of a man gaining confidence. It was a complete rewrite of his character without the build-up to justify it. It felt like the writer just wanted him to reach that point, forcing him into becoming what he wanted him to become, and he stopped feeling like a real person. And since solo leveling focuses on Jin-Woo so much, losing this one element that made it exciting completely destroyed the show. This is youzersseif Sensei, and I make video analysis about animes, series, or shows. Subscribe if this video helps you with any information.